Under the influence of alcohol, I lose my freedom. Under the influence of alcohol, I lose control over my own actions. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the state is here to protect me from doing irrational decisions when I have no control over myself. And therefore, Team Slovakia will today stand for the duty of the state, which is protection of the people, protection of the freedoms of people. We'll talk to you about the motion that this House would ban alcohol. We'll explain why this is necessary in 3 points. First of all, the role of the state and why it is its duty to protect the people from getting rid of this freedom. Secondly, the harms to family that this motion has, or that alcohol has. And after that, the second speaker will explain to you how this is harmful to the society in general and how it puts the state in a tough situation when alcohol is not banned. So moving on to how we would want to put this motion into practice, how we would want to ban alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that, first of all, we believe alcohol should be prohibited in production, in sale, distribution, and even consumption. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone caught with a large amount of alcohol on him or in his house would be given either a fee or, in extreme cases, could even be imprisoned. It would, of course, depend on the individual cases. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this is something that the state has to do because of its duty to protect the people. So let me move on to the first argument. But before I do that, let's take that from the exam.
Can you tell us why the abuse of choices by a few is reason to curtail the rights of the vast majority?
Thank you, ma'am. This is something that influences society on a really great extent, ladies and gentlemen. More than 99% of the people of most countries drink alcohol on a pretty frequent basis, ladies and gentlemen. And this is something that really influences people since teenage years to adulthood and is a great problem in society that we face almost every day. So that's the answer to that question. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, the main purpose of the state is to protect the people and to protect the freedoms of their people. Although it may sound contradictory at first, saying, why should we ban people from buying and producing alcohol? Isn't that their freedom? Ladies and gentlemen, let me explain to you why it is not so. Freedom, ladies and gentlemen, goes hand in hand with autonomy and with rationality, and the ability to do autonomous decisions at any instance. And ladies and gentlemen, because alcohol is something that prevents people from doing so, it limits their freedom. Though a person may independently and rationally decide at first to buy alcohol, there is no way that that person can know what will happen once he buys it. Just like you cannot rationally decide to let go of your irrationality and be irrational for the next couple of hours, or hand in your own integrity of making decisions to someone else. Why can't you do that? Because you don't know what will happen. Because you lose control of the situation and are no longer rational and no longer in control of your own actions, therefore losing your freedom, ladies and gentlemen, because freedom, again, goes hand in hand with rationality and autonomy. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a restriction to freedom to ban alcohol, because a person, though he may at first be rational, loses his rationality because of the main trait of alcohol. Firstly, when he is drinking alcohol, because, of course, he loses the ability to make rational decisions. But secondly, also, further on, because it makes him addictive, which is something that I will explain more in the second argument. Yes, sir?
Can you please explain why rationality is conceded by mere consumption, as is in the vast majority of cases, and not overconsumption?
Thank you, sir. The fact is that, yes, overconsumption is the main problem of alcohol today, ladies and gentlemen. But by preventing people from drinking alcohol altogether, we are preventing people from drinking alcohol abundantly, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe that this is the only possible way of doing so. Are you going to put a camera into the house of every single individual to check if they are not drinking more alcohol than is okay according to the state? No, ladies and gentlemen, we do not believe that infringement would be an okay thing to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's now explain harms to family that alcohol has. We believe that family is the basic and most functioning basis of a society, ladies and gentlemen. And alcohol has severe negative effects, on this family. I'll explain this on 2 levels. First of all, the immediate consequences of drinking alcohol, and second of all, the long-term consequences that it has on people and therefore on their families. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, under the influence of alcohol, people lose their restraints and behave abnormally, behave in a way they would not behave if they had not drunk alcohol, often aggressively. even towards your closest people. They lose the ability of thinking rationally about every single situation, and therefore even a slight conflict, a slight mistake that their child or their wife, for example, if we're talking about the father of a family, could have made, can lead towards violence and violent actions of these people, ladies and gentlemen. And this has bad effects, of course, on the family. The alcohol is the principal cause, the most widespread cause in the world today of domestic abuse and of domestic violence, ladies and gentlemen. And many children are taken away from their parents because they are alcoholics and they don't treat them the way they should treat them. So ladies and gentlemen, firstly, alcohol in effect, we have negative effect on family because of these situations when parents are not able to take care of their children or perhaps sometimes even beat them up because they are under the influence of alcohol. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at another great characteristic of alcohol. Besides impeding upon your rationality at that given moment, it also makes you addictive, ladies and gentlemen. And it's addictive on two levels. Firstly, no, thank you. Firstly, physically. When you drink alcohol, your brain starts producing these receptors that then react to alcohol whenever you drink it again, and that make you want to drink more alcohol, ladies and gentlemen. And it is very hard, no thank you, it is very hard to not do that. We can see this, of course, in society because we have a great amount of addictive people who are not able to put that addiction away because it is something that physically incapacitates them from rational decisions. But ladies and gentlemen, this is also mental. A person under the influence of alcohol loses sight of his problems and goes into a state of irrationality, which people find to be extremely pleasant. Now, we do not, ladies and gentlemen, want people living in this state because that is not the right way to solve your problems, of course. However, a person, when is in that state, because he has this feeling of pleasure, he wants to go back to that state. And this, again, is one of the great things that causes people to be addictive. And ladies and gentlemen, being addictive has great problems in your family, right? When children see you buying more and more alcohol, they lose trust and respect they need for their parents, first of all. And secondly, this also establishes great financial problems and burdens on families because the cost of alcohol, although maybe not high when you buy one bottle, becomes high when you buy more and more and more, which is determined by this addiction that alcohol causes in you. So ladies and gentlemen, because we believe that banning alcohol is a way that the duty of the state can be fulfilled and that people's freedom can be protected by the state, because we believe, ladies and gentlemen, that alcohol has only bad effects on the rationality and on the freedom of people, we believe that it should be banned.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fact that a few people choose to consume too much, the fact that a few people go overboard should never be a legitimate reason to ban the choices of an overwhelming majority of the population. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it isn't consumption of alcohol that is a problem to alcohol itself, but the problem is overconsumption. Now today, ladies and gentlemen, Team India will not stand party to curtailing legitimate choice of people. And today, in my speech, I will be telling you about a person's right to choose his own lifestyle and about the widespread black market that is created by banning alcohol. And my second speaker will be telling you about the social acceptability of alcohol in itself. But before that, let's look at the case that they've put forward thus far. Today, ladies and gentlemen, they raised a couple of questions in their first speech. They raised this question of whether people have the freedom to actually enjoy a glass of wine. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to tell you that it's not the consumption of alcohol that in itself is bad. Taking a beer at the end of a hard day's work or consuming one glass of wine with friends is not in any way going to curtail your rationality or make you give up your choices or lose any autonomy over yourself. What happens, ladies and gentlemen, no thank you sir, what happens to cause loss of all this rationality is when people addictively continue to consume the alcohol in itself. And we think today the government has mechanisms in place to ensure that people don't overly consume and therefore cause harm. We think that bars and other places that sell alcohol do not sell after a point. They stop you from consuming too much alcohol when you have already consumed. And we don't think that consumption in itself is a bad thing. And we'd like to point out, no thank you sir, we'd like to point out that not everybody is addicted to alcohol the way they portray. Most of society accepts it as a part of their everyday life. And therefore we think, ladies and gentlemen, that people should have freedom to enjoy one glass of wine if they so choose. And then they told you that consuming alcohol will cause heavy domestic abuse, and they'll cause financial burdens upon people who are addicted. We tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that in the case of domestic abuse, we do not punish alcohol in itself, we punish the crime that is domestic abuse. And we think that will be the actual deterrent. No thank you, sir. And more so we think, ladies and gentlemen, that people who are addicted to alcohol still have other avenues to get that same alcohol, only now, instead of going down to a local bar and buying that alcohol, they will get it from the black market. They will still spend money anyway, and they will spend more money than is required than they do in the status quo. And additionally, the alcohol that they consume in the black market is often illicit and unhealthy, and therefore they have additional problems because of that. And we don't think that addicts will stop just because they ban it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me first begin by moving into my constructive. Let me first tell you the mechanisms that are in place to ensure that alcohol doesn't become a huge problem in society. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the government oversees the kinds of alcohol production that occurs in the status quo. Illicit liquor, for example, is banned, and anyone found not sticking to the standards that alcohol needs to be maintained in order to be healthy, anyone found violating such standards and producing and selling such alcohol will be brought down, the production units will be brought down. Most of the governments monitor the packaging and avoid spoilage of that same alcohol to cause the exacerbated health consequences that it has. And ladies and gentlemen, we also think that the government has mechanisms to stop people from causing excessive harm by overconsumption of alcohol, like drunk driving laws. If you're caught driving under influence, you will be heavily penalized and sometimes even arrested. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll take you in a minute, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we also think that government has mechanisms to help the most vulnerable population, which is the underage people, and the underage consumption of alcohol is banned in society. Yes, sir.
Well, if all these mechanisms are working so well, why do we still see alcohol as the principal cause of domestic violence?
Sir, we don't believe that alcohol is as huge a problem as you portray it to be. We think that domestic violence occurs in a smaller number of cases than you portray, and we think in such a situation, the people are often addicted to alcohol, and they are not going to stop by imposing a ban on alcohol. More so, we think that the best deterrent to stop domestic abusers who abuse under the influence of alcohol is to punish them for perpetrating the act of abuse in itself. And ladies and gentlemen, let me now tell you about a person's right to choose his own lifestyle. Every person is born with freedoms and choices and endowed with the independence to make his own decisions. A person's body is the only way they can legitimately exercise these freedoms and work to realize their desires. But therefore, the only ones who should be able to dictate what choices you can make and what you can consume with your own body, and this bodily integrity that people have is respected and enshrined by the government. How does this, no thank you sir, how does this relate to alcohol, ladies and gentlemen? When a person makes a decision to consume or indulge in something that has a potential to harm, they know fully well what the consequences are, what boundaries, if crossed, would be lethal. And they know that there are legal norms to help them in cases of addiction. Therefore, if in full knowledge of the above, they choose to consume alcohol, ladies and gentlemen, we don't see why governments wish to curtail their freedoms. And we think that the mechanisms in place to reduce the harms, no thank you sir, and the regulations that are imposed and the standards that are monitored go a long way in reducing the overall harm that alcohol has the potential to cause. And we think a ban is therefore an unfair limitation on a person's right to choice of lifestyle. More so, ladies and gentlemen, bans increase the widespread emergence of black markets. Let's look at what happens when there's an active infringement upon lifestyle freedoms. People always find other ways, ladies and gentlemen, and in the case of alcohol, this is going to be a black market. Let's look at what happened when alcohol in itself was banned in USA in the 1930s. In this era of prohibition, unprecedented black markets were available all over USA. These were characterized by hoarding of alcohol by bars, illicit production of liquor, and no control over who the alcohol was sold to, how much was sold to the same person. And this prohibition, in a minute sir, this prohibition hardly managed to successfully limit the access to alcohol, and instead diverted and exposed people to a black market where they can consume more lethal alcohol. Yes sir.
At the same time, countries of Arab world managed to ban alcohol quite as well as some Scandinavian countries. So how can you explain that?
So we don't believe that that is in fact true of every government and every society. We think that when society chooses to embrace alcohol and make it a part of its own lifestyle, when people like the consumption of alcohol as such, they are not going to stop because of a ban. And we think to cater to this demand for alcohol in the presence of a ban, there will be supply met, and this supply will be met in black markets. Now, let's look at why there's a greater chance of exploitation of people under a black market. The pricing and the quality of the alcohol, as I told you, is heavily messed up in a black market, ladies and gentlemen, and the people consume illicit liquor which has the potential to actually harm them. And more so, the quantity that they consume is not clearly monitored. The person selling it in the black market can convince a person to buy more than they'd like to and convince them to drink more. And therefore, and more so, ladies and gentlemen, these black markets are set in the dodgier areas of society and away from the government's eyes. And therefore, there's more chance for alcohol-induced violence to occur in the case of black markets rather than in the status quo. Thus, we see, ladies and gentlemen, that alcohol can be regulated, managed, and enjoyed when it's in the government's open sphere. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we don't see just reason to ban alcohol. And my second speaker will also be telling you why alcohol has evolved to become socially acceptable. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, Team India does not stand for the ban of legitimate source.
Ladies and gentlemen, alcohol today is the principal cause of domestic violence, and it is also one of the principal causes of the deaths at drugs. We believe that alcohol is harmful, and it is harmful even in small amounts. Therefore, in my speech, I will firstly refer to the 2 points that were brought by the team of opposition, the freedom and how alcohol in itself does not contribute to the freedom, to personal freedom at any point. And secondly, I will tell you about the black market and why this should not be the breaking point of this debate. Then I will try to also respond to some claims that were brought up by the opposition to our own points, and lastly introduce my own arguments about other harms to the society. Let's start with the freedom, ladies and gentlemen. We have told you, our first speaker has told you, that although the first decision about drinking alcohol may be rational up to a point, no other decisions that come afterwards are rational. Ladies and gentlemen, we can see that after even consuming a small amount, a glass of wine or a glass of beer, the threshold of how much you believe you're able to do, and no thank you, is slowly decreasing. Afterwards, you stop thinking about how much you want to drink, and you usually end up drunk. We may see that an average, a median party drinker usually comes home after severe influence of alcohol, and these people are not behaving in any sort of way similar to what they would do if they're sober. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that if team opposition wants to defend the point of freedom, they have firstly to show us, no thank you, that there is freedom in doing decisions after you start drinking alcohol, because this is the times that we believe that the state should interfere and should protect you from doing something you would not do if you were fully sober. From beating your own children or your wife, or going onto the road and driving. What they have told us is that, well, the state has mechanism to solve this. For example, that we're punishing people for the consequences that they cause when they're drunk. Well, we believe that this is too late, and we should, no thank you, interfere in the lower points of these crimes, and that we should do things preemptively so these people do not have to suffer, and that no thank you, and that the society does not have to really inflict all these pains. Also, they have told us that there are mechanisms of control, such as that in bars you are only going to receive that much alcohol because they're not going to give you more after a time. Well, we believe that this is not present in the households, where people just get a lot of drink and then continue drinking and then possibly may cause one of these harms. We believe that these are the facts that they firstly need to answer in order to protect the point of freedom. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain how these limits are present in households when people buy them from the black market under your model?
Well, what they have also tried to tell us is that it is as easy to get alcohol from the black market as it is just to go down the street to a store, to a local market, and get some bottles. Well, we believe that, firstly, there is a great difference between alcohol being legal and illegal, because it's just so much simpler to obtain a larger amount of alcohol when it is legal and is also close to. That also what we believe is that even when the alcohol is, no thank you, more expensive on the black market, people cannot afford as much alcohol as they would be able to afford otherwise. So we believe that there might be no thank you, a small amount of cases where this is not going to work, but we believe in the majority of cases, and this is what the team proposition stands for, the system is going to be effective. And now that brings me to the second point that they have told us about the black market. We believe that prohibition was not a success, but that there are countries where the bans on alcohol and on other drugs are performed effectively. Such as we may see that in, no thank you, Netherlands, after the marijuana was legalized, the consumption increased many-fold. So we believe that essentially when something is illegal, to many people that is enough of a deterrence not to do it. And then also what we see is that, as we already told you, even in the black market, no thank you, there is not as much alcohol available, so these risks are minimized. So ladies and gentlemen, as I have already mentioned to you, the team of proposition has not effectively rebutted our point of the, no thank you, of the role of the government to protect freedoms of people, because we believe that unless they explain to us why, if a great majority of society suffers under the consequences of alcohol and the overuse of alcohol, but as we all have already shown you, there is a substantially large amount of people who tend to abuse alcohol, such as the young people, no thank you, on the parties, such as people that are quickly getting addicted to it. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe there is a real problem. So let me move on to our split argument, and those are the other harms to society that alcohol poses. And we believe that there are other, no thank you, other obvious threats to society, such as, for example, the car accidents, that were already mentioned, and the violence that people are willing and much likelier to commit if their boundaries are shifted much lower, and the threshold has been so crossed. And you don't need to thank you, go very far to see this happening. We can see that the rioters and hooligans in the streets after matches most of the time commit the violence because they are under the influence of alcohol, and that most, no thank you, of the car accidents have this as their primary cause. But we are not only talking about these obvious threats, we're also talking about how this basically harms state in more principled ways, such as, for example, that the state has to misallocate some of its resources in order to treat these people that are under the influence of alcohol. We may see that, for example, in states where healthcare is provided by the state, much of the capital and human resources in the form of money and doctors, I'll take you in a second, has to go exactly to treat these alcoholics from diseases such as kidney and liver failure and cirrhosis, and that the healthcare system cannot effectively treat other very important and harmful diseases that are, however, not caused by irresponsible behavior. Yes, ma'am?
So these alcohol producers pay huge amounts of taxes to help the government cover these expenditures, if that is your only problem with this with alcohol.
No, we believe that if it worked like this, then it would be a principally hypocritical stance of the country to receive some bribes and then on the other hand to see how much harm is caused as a result of alcohol. We believe that, ladies and gentlemen, it is not able to just tell us that the alcohol companies would refund the state for all the harms that are caused, because we see that this is not happening in any of the cases today. So, what we have shown you in this debate, and why the team of proposition essentially has to win this debate, is that we're winning on the point of freedom. We have shown you that although the first decision to take a glass of wine may be the rational decision, any of the other decisions that continue are not rational. Because you're likely to drink more, you're likely not to stop. And then slowly you get addicted, which means that the rest of your decisions are not going to be rational, ladies and gentlemen. We have shown you that there are substantial harms to the close environment of these people that are under the use of alcohol, and that you do not have to be an over-consumer of alcohol in order to inflict these harms. We, as we have mentioned so many times, see that alcohol is the principal cause of domestic violence and the accidents on the streets, on the roads, and we believe that this is enough reasons for you to vote for the proposition. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Team Slovakia wish to talk to you about addicts. Well, here's a little secret about addicts, ladies and gentlemen. They wish to have alcohol, even if it's banned. They wish to have alcohol, even if Team Slovakia wishes to prohibit it. And how will they do that, ladies and gentlemen? We've shown you, through the existence of a black market, that the problem of addiction isn't going to be in any way solved under their model. It's simply going to send them underground, it will simply exacerbate the harms caused by it, and it will not even allow them to go into things such as rehabilitation because of the social stigma attached to alcohol under Slovakia's model. Ladies and gentlemen, Team India will not stand party to arbitrarily curtailing a legitimate choice, and therefore we stand against the banning of alcohol. Before moving on to my constructive arguments, ladies and gentlemen, about this idea of social acceptability of alcohol and why a long-term ban will not be possible, let me look at some areas of rebuttal. First, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at this idea of limitations to freedom and this idea of irrationality. Unlike other substances which are banned in the status quo, like drugs, ladies and gentlemen, the possibility or the probability of one alcohol consumer who is a social drinker, who takes a couple of beers after a stressful day of work, getting irrational, going out and crashing his car is very low. Of him getting addicted and losing control over his active choice and over his actions is incredibly low. We think this isn't the majority, this isn't the characteristics that you attribute to the people who you generally associate with drinking alcohol, and we therefore think that it's absolutely wrong to limit the choice of so many people who do this on a social basis just because of the fact that some people overconsume, because of the fact that some people abuse this right and therefore cause problems. We think that that's what you should attempt to solve instead of using that as a justification to limit the rights of so many. We think you should be working on making sure that you do not sell excessive alcohol to people. You should be working on making sure that you do not sell alcohol to underage people instead of blaming all these problems on the sale of alcohol itself, ladies and gentlemen, and therefore pushing for a blanket ban. Second, ladies and gentlemen, let me look at this idea of third-party harms and the black market. They told us there are a variety of harms caused because of alcohol. First, they told you that harms occur to the person themselves. We tell you when the people make that legitimate and informed decision to consume alcohol, despite knowing the fact that it may, in a very much small minority of cases, actually cause them harm in the future, we're okay with that, ladies and gentlemen. Then they talk to you about third-party harms in the sense of domestic abuse, in the sense of how people are going to spend all their money on drinks, ladies and gentlemen, and will not take care of their families. So first of all, we think those people who go into domestic abuse, the people who are going to spend all their money, these are people who are prone to these things anyway. These are the people who are going to have access to the black market and are going to use the black market anyway. They told us that alcohol is costlier under the black market, which makes it even worse financially for these families, ladies and gentlemen. And we think that's simply not solved under their model. No, thank you, sir. And they told you it's done in other countries, therefore it can be done in everywhere around the world. We told you in countries like in Arab nations, the people of the entire country, socially and culturally, believe that alcohol isn't something that they should be consuming. We think in such a scenario, the people are making that legitimate choice themselves to not consume alcohol, and we don't think that same criteria apply to other countries where alcohol is accepted as a way of life, ladies and gentlemen. So finally they told you about harm to society, and we believe we should be punishing the crime and not alcohol, which is something that's enjoyed by a vast majority of people without causing any of these harms that they claim to be caused, ladies and gentlemen. So having established that, let me move on to my constructive argument. We've seen that alcohol isn't how they've portrayed it to be. We see that alcohol is evolved to be an accepted part of society. To prove this, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the following things. We see in the sense of culture that alcohol is evolved to be something that's an incredibly important part of culture. For instance, in France, ladies and gentlemen, the government actively subsidizes the wine industry because it's so integral to their culture. We see the symbolic insignificance of things like champagne at weddings or at sporting events because of how important it is there. We tell you about things like wine tasting, which is taken up as a cultural activity, ladies and gentlemen, and we think that's the first level of analysis. Second, we tell you that even other forms, just a minute sir, we tell you that other forms of alcohol have become an integral part of social situations, such as drinking at parties in order to lower your inhibitions and be able to talk freely with your friends and have a bit of fun, ladies and gentlemen. We think it's become an important part of those situations as well. Yes, sir?
Why should the state actively produce harms and encourage harms that are made by the consumption of alcohol, even if it is socially acceptable. Why?
So we don't think the government should be encouraging those harms, which is exactly why we punish drunken driving, which is exactly why we place a limit on the amount of alcohol that can be sold to people in a bar after a certain amount of time. Those are the problems that team opposition is absolutely willing to tackle, but we don't think that's met by banning alcohol as a whole, and we don't think that's justified either. So next level of analysis in this, ladies and gentlemen, is this idea that people often come back home and have a couple of beers as a method of recreation to calm themselves down. That's accepted in society, ladies and gentlemen. Fourthly, we see that governments actively make a form of profits or revenue off this in the form of taxes on some countries where alcohol is sold by the governments themselves. We think that is something that governments believe is legitimately justified. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot ignore the fact that multi-billion-dollar industries are based around these things. We see in the case of Greece or Italy, where things like wine tasting, manufacturing, selling and exporting form an integral part of their economy. We'll point to the economies of southern Australia, which are heavily dependent on their vineyards and have been so for hundreds of years, ladies and gentlemen. So what do all these examples show you? We tell you that alcohol has become an acceptable part of society. And therefore it shows you that in the vast majority of cases, it isn't something as they've painted it to be. It's something that's socially acceptable, it's something that people feel is fine to do, and therefore there is no justifiable ground to limit the ability of these people to choose these things because of the fact that in the minority of cases, there exist harms, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, it also tells you that when people of these countries are so actively for something like this, we tell you that any ban on alcohol cannot be brought into place, and second, cannot be maintained, ladies and gentlemen, because of multiple reasons. There exists the lobbying power of so many of these companies. There exists the economic advantages provided by all of these. And there exists the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that the people who vote the governments in believe that alcohol isn't wrong, that believe that consumption of alcohol is simply a lifestyle choice that's legitimate, that's fine, and that's something that's integral to their culture and their livelihoods, ladies and gentlemen. So today, Team India has shown you why consumption of alcohol is a legitimate lifestyle choice. We've shown you why banning alcohol as a whole results in the creation of a black market which exacerbates all the harms that they wish to ban, that they wish to remove, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, we've told you that alcohol is evolved to be a socially accepted part of society, and we think therefore there are no legitimate grounds for banning it, and that such a ban cannot exist or cannot be kept in place for a very long time. So ladies and gentlemen, Team India will not stand party to arbitrarily curtailing a legitimate choice. We beg to oppose.
Ladies and gentlemen, in my speech I will first show you how alcohol curtails the freedom of people who drink it. Then, in the second point, I'll move on to the idea about whether we should prevent harms done by something or merely punish people who cause these harms under the influence of something. Then in the third point, I'll look at why the problems which were raised by the team of opposition about black market are not as significant and should not be the point on which this debate is adjudicated. And in the fourth point, I will then talk about why states should not agree with something only because it has evolved to be socially acceptable. So first of all, let's look at the freedom. The opposition have told us that we are basically only dealing, and we should only be dealing with people who overconsume alcohol. However, what we have done throughout the debate in our first argument is we have shown you how alcohol curtails the freedom of the person and therefore is banned from principle and should therefore, no thank you, be banned absolutely. And this is done in various ways. First of all, when you drink alcohol, you lose certain part of your autonomy because your decisions are then not only made by your, so to speak, your brain, but they are also influenced by alcohol. We believe, no thank you, that this is a problem. Why is it a problem? Well, because then these decisions can cause something over which you have responsibility. And that means you have then responsibility for something you would not have done if you were sober. There are many examples of this. No, thank you. Even though social drinkers on the parties, you know, many things happen on parties. Parties are a wild environment. People cannot know what they are going to experience on a party what they are going to do when they decide to drink. And more important, when people drink, there is a certain threshold of alcohol level in blood when you simply do not care anymore, no thank you, what were your plans beforehand. This means that basically the freedom of that person is infringed upon at that very moment, which can result, I'll take you in a second, in consequences for that person which they didn't intend to bear. Yes?
Can you explain to us why actively trying to stop a man from buying his beer is not a limitation to his freedom?
Thank you. I will address that in my second point, of which I am now going into. We believe that simply we are able to limit the freedom of that person in order to give them more freedom, so to speak. Because we are then able to make these people act autonomously and rationally. And now I'm moving to the second point, which is the point about prevention versus punishment. Team India told us in this debate that it is okay, we can, limit people's choices when to buy alcohol, and we can punish people who do something wrong. Who do something wrong under the influence of alcohol? What I believe is this is simply too late. It's too late because the harm has already been done. And this is something that needs to be remembered, no thank you, at all times. Because what we believe is essentially it is better to strive for a society in which harms are not done in the first place than to try, than punishing people responsible and act, so to speak, post hoc. Now, to the other point about how there is going to be, no thank you, a huge black market which is going to be created by our model. What we believe is that the idea on banning something, there is always going to be some form of black market. Now, what is the difference between normal market and the black market? In normal market, when alcohol is freely produced, you have mass production of alcohol. Alcohol is produced in huge factories, millions of bottles per day. What we believe is that when we ban alcohol, I'll take you in a second, we are limiting the supply of alcohol, and therefore we are doing improvement to the society. Yes?
Why should and why would a government ban something that's culturally and socially acceptable and economically vital?
I'll move to that in my next point, but I'll now answer your point about economical viability. What we believe is that this point is wrong on two principles. First of all, we believe that money should never be a factor in deciding whether something is moral, and that the state should, in fact, be the moral agent in this debate. And then then the team India told us that basically state can put taxes on alcohol so to discourage people from drinking it. And what I believe is this puts the state in a very strange position, because the state is at the same time trying to tell people not to drink, but then again the state gains revenue from taxes that it gains when people drink alcohol. So we believe it is highly critical from the state to tell people that they should not drink alcohol and at the same time gain profit from the fact that they drink alcohol. No thank you. Now I'm moving to the point about social acceptance. And what I believe needs to be told at this point is that when something is socially acceptable, that doesn't mean it is moral. Because if alcohol is socially acceptable, the only thing that has happened, no thank you, means that something in the society has gone wrong. What I believe is that when the society has evolved in such a way to accept this kind of behavior that is, no thank you, actively damaging people, that is causing road deaths, that is causing domestic abuse, that is causing problems in the families, not only in this way, but also in the form of emotional trauma for people who, for the children, for example, who might only once perhaps see their father come home drunken, but that image of their father in such state will remain, and this is what I believe is a problem. Now, what has to be understood is the state should be a moral agent, and morality is not defined by what the society thinks is acceptable, but rather it is defined on measuring the harms and the benefits of something. And I believe that the benefits for society, the ability of people to make rational decisions at all times, so to speak, we are empowering them in their freedom, then our prevention of horrible harms that are associated with alcohol, and then again the betterment of the situation in the state itself, which doesn't have to deal with problems associated with alcohol abuse in its medical system or in other areas of its control. We believe this is why banning alcohol is the moral choice, and therefore I beg you to vote for the proposition.
Slovakia seems to be slightly confused. Now they tell us that people love alcohol so much and are so addicted to alcohol that if they take one sip of it, they will want so much more and they will keep going back just to consume more. But at the same time they tell you that a piece of legislation on paper is going to stop all these people from consuming this alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, we today think that a large part of their burden is based on the fact that they need to show us that this is efficient in curbing people from consuming this alcohol, which they clearly haven't shown us today, and I'm going to prove that to you in my third speech. As a third speaker of Team India, there are three questions I'm asking in today's debate. First, we ask you, which side actually limits the freedoms of the people? Second, we ask you, what are the effects of alcohol in society? And finally, we ask you, what are the effects of the wide establishment of a black market in alcohol? Let's move on to the first question, ladies and gentlemen, as to which side actually limits the freedoms of the people. Now they tell us that the rationality of people is affected by consumption of alcohol. Now we've consistently shown you in all our speeches that overconsumption is a problem and the state has placed limits on this. Now the idea we got from them on this issue was that you actually can't have a camera in your house to see whether people are consuming more than a point or not. Now ladies and gentlemen, we think that same problem exists in their situation as well. We think that if these people buy this alcohol from the black market and get back home with that alcohol, we don't think they're establishing CCTV cameras either to check whether or not these people are drinking at home. No, thank you, sir. But then they told us that addiction is a huge problem. Maybe the first time it's consensual, after that it's not. We actually tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that people make an informed choice before they consume alcohol. We tell you that they know the harms associated with alcohol and they consume alcohol despite knowing these harms. And that we think is an informed choice, that we think is a rational choice. But also we tell you that the addiction rates of alcohol are not like other issues that the state has intervened in. For drugs, for example. Therefore, we think that this is not a reason for them to ban alcohol and tell you that addiction is an overwhelming problem. But then they told you that people do not know what they're going to experience. And we disagree on that count as well. We think it's pretty widely established what alcohol can or cannot do, and that's exactly why we think a lot of people actually drink responsibly in the status quo. And we don't see why we're punishing them. We've asked them this question again and again as to why we punish people who drink responsibly, and we just haven't got any sort of response from Team Slovakia. But ladies and gentlemen, to our speeches, what did we show you today? We showed you that the actual limitation of freedom comes when you limit this freedom of choice that they have to pick their lifestyles. We showed you that this actual limitation of freedom comes when you tell them actively and stop them from buying something, buying a bottle of beer, for example. And that we don't think is okay. And that we think is the limitation to the freedoms of the people. Second, we ask you, what are the effects of alcohol in society? And we have a lot of interesting things we've got from Team Proposition here, ladies and gentlemen. They tell us that it's immoral, and they tell us it may be socially acceptable, but immoral. Here's what we have to say to them. We actually don't think the government dictates morality. We don't think Team Slovakia dictates morality either. We think society dictates morality, ladies and gentlemen. We think whether things are moral or immoral come from the people's perspective, come from what society feels about that issue. Therefore, we feel that societal acceptance is actually a reason to believe that this is not immoral. which is also a reason to believe that the state is not being hypocritical in this issue. But then they gave us this idea that preventing it is better than punishment. But here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Punishing a person establishes a deterrent, and that stops people from doing the same mistakes or the crimes in future. This we don't think happens in prevention. In the case of prevention, we think they actually still continue to consume this alcohol through the black market. No, thank you, madam. And then we got these ideas of domestic violence and drunken driving, and whether or not the state is encouraging these harms. We first told you that the state is not encouraging these harms. We told you they're punishing these people who actually crash their cars because they're drunk, and we told you we punish people who beat their wives at home. But ladies and gentlemen, what we like to tell you here is that these people who actually beat their wives at home because of alcohol are prone to violence anyway. And we don't think that's the reason we should be banning alcohol in society. No, thank you, sir. And finally, they told us that these will have effects on children. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we actually think what this does to children is exacerbated in these conditions. If these fathers or these men in their houses are so irresponsible and care about their family to such an extent that is negligible, we think they're probably going to send their kids out to buy them that illegal liquor. And we think that as an effect on children is a very bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. So finally, we ask you this question about the wide establishment of a black market through banning alcohol. Now for this, we've got this response from them that says anything that we ban has a black market. But we don't think that's similar to alcohol, right? We think how many people consume alcohol is actually different from how it is in other situations. Which is why we think the black market that is established through banning alcohol is not just so much wider, but is so much more dangerous. Because it opens up a whole new avenue of these producers exploiting the people and coercing them into buying more and more alcohol. We think that's a problem that comes only through the black market. But then they told us that I'll take you in a moment, sir. Then they told us it's difficult to access the black market. We actually don't see how that is, ladies and gentlemen. Drugs are banned in the status quo, but we still find so many people who are under the influence of drugs on the roads. We don't think that difficulty is actually a problem because these people, if they're so addicted and so involved with the consumption of alcohol, we actually think they will continue doing it even if it is slightly difficult for them to access the black market. Yes, sir.
Yes, and then there are many people who are not so much involved in the consumption, which would stop consuming alcohol, and that is a good thing.
So you tell us that there are so many people that are not involved in such consumption. And to that we tell you exactly our reason to tell you not to ban alcohol. There are so many people who are not involved in such consumption. Why are you limiting their rights? Is a question we've asked you from our very first speech, and they haven't given us a response to that, ladies and gentlemen. And then they gave us this idea that Arab countries ban alcohol. Now first we told you that the societies of these Arab countries actually believe that it is not a good thing to consume alcohol. But even if they did, ladies and gentlemen, we think Arab countries limit a lot of your other rights, and we don't think that's an okay thing to do in this case. And then they gave us this example of where Netherlands had legalized drugs, and then now in the Netherlands, drug consumption is illegal. We actually think that's an example that falls on our side. We think the fact that despite the illegality of drug consumption in the Netherlands, there are cities in the Netherlands that are hubs for people to do marijuana. And we think that's exactly the situation that's going to happen under their model as well. And finally, they told you, ladies and gentlemen, about the health and the costs involved. And we actually think this becomes a lot worse if the black market is established. We think people are less likely to go for rehabilitation, and that is worse. We think that people are likely to consume alcohol that is inherently worse than what it is right now, because of the fact that these people in these black markets will mix impurities in this alcohol, and those sort of situations create a problem. And then we also showed you that the financial burden is exponentially increased on these people who buy this alcohol now, because it is a lot more expensive on this black market, and that's worse in their model, which is not in ours, ladies and gentlemen. And to this, we got from them resounding silence. For all these reasons, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot limit the rights of people who want to consume alcohol. I beg you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that while both teams today wish to protect the freedom of individuals in society, Team Slovakia wishes to do this by not allowing people to relish a glass of wine or celebrate over champagne. While both teams today wish to curtail the harms of addiction to alcohol, Team Slovakia wishes to do this by directing people to dodgy black markets that are sure to emerge. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of today's debate, we see two key questions that have arisen. First, what is the actual impact of alcohol in society? And second, what is the actual efficacy of a ban on alcohol? Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this debate, I urge you to go with the team that actually works for society. For Team India will not stand party to arbitrarily curtailing a legitimate choice. What is the actual impact of alcohol in society, ladies and gentlemen? Today, from Team Proposition, we heard that people are harmed by, addicted to, and abused because of alcohol, which they don't even freely consume. To this, ladies and gentlemen, in our very first speech, we told you that curtailing a choice that people make with full knowledge of the consequences is not the way a state works, and that one glass is not lethally does not lethally make a person irrational. And we told you that therefore, that since the state has mechanisms in place to ensure minimized chance of overdose, we think it's perfectly fine and people still work under their own freedom. More so, ladies and gentlemen, we told you that the vast majority of people are not addicted to alcohol, and it actually is a part of everyday life in society. And our second speaker took this further and told you why alcohol is integral to social activities like wine tasting and part of culture in countries like France. He also told you about export economies like in southern Australia, where livelihoods are dependent on these vineyards and these bars. The response they gave to this, ladies and gentlemen, was that money should never be a factor for governments to engage in immoral activities. In our third speech, however, ladies and gentlemen, we told you that morality is evolved by society in itself. And since society accepts alcohol and enjoys the social consumption of alcohol, there is no cause for alcohol to be immoral. It may have been once in the past, but right now society has evolved and now accepts alcohol, and therefore the government is not engaging in immoral activities and is instead generating active revenue. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's now look at the efficiency of the ban on alcohol that they proposed. They assume that legislation alone will stop consumption and asserted the same through 3 speeches, and then stressed on the benefits of an alcohol-free society. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in our very first speech, we told you that an alcohol-free society is not something that people want. Therefore, it should not be the primary aim of any government. And more so, ladies and gentlemen, we went on to show you that their policy does not, in fact, efficiently establish an alcohol-free society. In our first speech, we told you that if people are truly addicted and alcohol is truly that addictive, they will find other avenues to get the same alcohol. And we gave you the example of the alcohol black market that existed during the Prohibition era in USA. More so, we went on to analyze in our first speech why this alcohol that you get in black markets is illicitly prepared and lethally concocted with impurities and other lethal substances, and why these black markets encourage unfettered sale of this lethal kind of alcohol, and therefore people are more likely to consume more. And our third speaker reiterated and took this further by telling you that the prices at which this alcohol is available in a black market is much higher. Therefore, these addicts will spend more and be worse off, and also be susceptible to illnesses and the host of illnesses that they propose, like kidney failure or cirrhosis. More so, ladies and gentlemen, we told you in our second speech that these abuses exacerbate in the presence of a black market and not in the presence of the status quo. And he told you that the best deterrent for punishing these abusers is actually adaptive punishment the government meets out, and not punishing alcohol and not pushing alcohol consumption underground itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this debate, I urge you to go with Team Opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, laws are not made in accordance with society. Laws are made in response to problems that exist in society. And throughout the course of this debate, Team Slovakia has been proving to you that yes, alcohol causes a variety of problems. This is something that I will address in my speech once more. I'll first talk about freedom, which was a point brought by both the opposition and the proposition, then about this punishment and whether that is the right way to deal with the harms brought by alcohol. And then I will address the point of the black market. So, ladies and gentlemen, freedom was something that both the proposition and opposition talked about a lot. While we as Team Slovakia explained to you that freedom comes hand in hand with making decisions, which is something that is infringed by alcohol drinking, the premise of the opposition was that you know the effects that alcohol has, that you know the consequences, and that you are fully informed. While we say that, yes, this is theoretically possible, it is never practically possible, because you do not know what decisions you will take in certain situations, because you cannot say what situations you will be in at that given moment when you are unable to make a rational decision, ladies and gentlemen. You are uninformed of what you will do in that situation, because that is the basic trait alcohol has, the basic consequence we believe that, yes, although it is a slight limitation perhaps to freedom on from the first point of view, when you look at the problem more deeply, we are saving people from those bad decisions that infringe upon their freedom and don't let them rationally decide. So we believe that the point of freedom falls to the proposition. Moving on to the second point about harms and the solution to the harms that was brought by the opposition. Both our second and third argument talked about how drinking alcohol causes harms to the family, to the society, and to generally the people living in a country. The opposition never said that this was not a problem. On the contrary, they said, yes, it is a problem, and their solution was to punish people after these things have happened. Their solution was to punish a person that has harmed someone else, to punish a person that has perhaps killed someone, to take away children from parents that have been beating and abusing them. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that that is not the right way to deal with harms caused by alcohol. Firstly, because we want to preempt these problems. We want these problems never to happen, ladies and gentlemen, because we believe it is the duty of the state to protect its citizens. And secondly, and I quote, they said, punishment is deterrence to the people, ladies and gentlemen. And if we look back at our model, even under our model, if someone was to drink alcohol or to produce it and sell it, they would be punished at that given moment. So of course, we have punishment as part of the model, but only after it proves to be a problem that preemption is not enough. Ladies and gentlemen, and then the third argument about a part of the black market that they brought. To this we said three things, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, banning something lowers the supply in itself because, of course, it is not legitimate to make it. Second of all, there are people that will be deterred by the fact that it is illegal. And thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, many people won't become addicted in the first place because at the start of your addiction, you simply buy alcohol from the shop when it is legal. You would not go to the black market if you have never drunk alcohol before, ladies and gentlemen. But at the same time, we said, yes, the black market is always a problem when banning something. This is something the opposition themselves said about drugs, but are they for drugs or are they against drugs, ladies and gentlemen? They said they agree with the banning of drugs, ladies and gentlemen. And if it was not a difference if something is legal and illegal, then the role of the state would be undermined in general and all mechanisms would not work anyway, ladies and